I guess I'll get started. So yeah, hi guys, and welcome to our intro to Flutter workshop. We're very excited here today to share our experience with Flutter and what we've been working on in respect to Flutter app development. And yeah, so let's just get right into it. So yeah, what is Flutter? Flutter is an open source UI framework and software development kit, which is also known as SDK, which is intended to fasten and simplify the UI and app creation process. It used to create beautiful natively compiled applications for mobile, web, desktop from a single code base. And the penultimate question is, why use Flutter when we have so many different programming languages and frameworks that are used for app development? And one of them is that Flutter uses Dart, which is an easy to understand object-oriented programming language for developing customized mobile applications. Programming in Dart can handle front-end and back-end development all in one place. And so I kind of would say that Dart is kind of like the Python of app development because it's very good for beginners to use, and it's also quick and easy to get stuff up and running. Another big benefit is that Flutter has the hot reload functionality, which allows developers to see the changes to their code almost instantaneously while keeping the state of the application. Flutter also supports cross-platform development. Using a single code base enables developers to develop a single application that seamlessly runs across iOS and Android devices. It also takes less time to test, as if you have one code base, then you can only really test one version of the application, as well as mentioned before, the hot reload functionality helps developers fix and test bugs in no time. And I guess one of the best features of Flutter is the widget. And Flutter has an amazing collection of pre-made crafted widgets that helps one create a super functional application in no time. It also is important to note that you can also create your own customized widgets too and reuse them throughout your Flutter applications. And last but not least, Flutter is supported through different IDEs, so including Android Studio and VS Code. Before we actually get into the demonstration, we wanted to also go through a bit of the terminology. And so as mentioned before, Flutter has widgets, which manages UI elements, styles, themes, and states. So some examples include having text, some formatting widgets like center, directionality, row, columns, similar to web development, and containers.
Right, yeah, so just to give you guys an overview of the structure of a Flutter application. So the structure for Flutter app normally takes the form of a widget tree, so where we see one widget nested inside of another. So for example, if we take a look at the phone app on the left-hand side, we can see that we start off with a scaffold encompassing everything. And then underneath the scaffold, we see an app bar as well as a container. And inside the container, there's a nested column. And then inside the column, there is a row as well as an image. And inside the row, that's composed of two other nested widgets, which is the text widget, as well as the icon widget. And it's important to note that each widget is completely customizable using properties to alter how they are displayed on screen. So for example, for the text widget, we have properties such as style and text align to format how the text looks, the color of it, the font size, font style. And for the image widget, we have alignment, image, height, etc. There's some more that we can look into later on. Right, and based on what we just talked about for widget and property, here's an example of the Flutter code. So we see, for example, scaffold, app bar, text. These are all widgets. And for properties, we see them denoted with the lowercase with the colon. So home, app bar, title, those are all properties. Right, now we want to go through some important terminology, which you will hear later on in our demo. So in Flutter, there's the stateless widget as well as the stateful widget. So the stateless widget essentially is used when the user's actions have no effect on what is displayed. So this means that stateless widgets never change. So some examples would be icons or text. So they stay as is throughout the entire product lifecycle. And we also have the stateful widget, which is when a change in the widget state variable affects what is shown. So this means that a stateful widget is dynamic. So its appearance can change based on the user's interactions with it and the data that it receives. Some examples would be like a checkbox, a slider, or a text field. We also have hot reload and hot restart, and these will be terms that you'll be hearing a lot later on in our demo. So hot reload essentially loads changes in the code into a virtual machine and rebuilds the widget tree. So it preserves the app's current state. For hot restart, that loads changes in the code and restarts the application, but the app state is not preserved.
Okay, so now I will put this link down in the chat and you guys can go ahead, click on it. So that's basically the code that we have. And you guys can see it live and see the live changes happening to it. And simultaneously, I will be showing you guys the demo on my side. Okay, I'll stop my screen share for a quick second. And I'll wait for everyone to go on to the link. Okie dokie. All right, so before I start going over the code, just a couple like prerequisites in a sense. So before you start actually building a Flutter app, there's a couple things that you'll have to make sure are in place. So one of them is having like your Xcode and your Android Studio all set up. There's a bunch of YouTube tutorials on how to get that done. And then you'd have to install the Flutter and Dart plugins. So if you're using VS Code, the easiest one is just to go there and then search up Dart and then followed by Flutter. And then, yeah, and then you're gonna have to ensure you have Flutter, run Flutter Doctor. So Flutter Doctor is kind of like a quick checkpoint which tells you that, oh yeah, all of these things are in place. So if I were to run it right now, Flutter Doctor. Now I already have everything set up. I have my simulator set up. I have Xcode, VS Code, all of that connected. So here, all of these are green check marks, which tells me that, oh, no issues found. And yeah, so what this essentially means is that I can run my app or I can build my app on both the iOS simulator and the Android simulator. So currently, this one right here is the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And if I were to go into my code, so I were to go there and click at the bottom right here, you can see that these are the different devices that I already have set up. And again, there's a bunch of YouTube tutorials on it. I'm not going to go over that because that's a very confusing process and I want to get down to the more interesting part. So I have the iPhone and I have the Android Pixel 2 set up. So today we're going to be using the iPhone 12 because I like how it looks. So starting off, when you create a new Flutter project, they give you the default file structure. So you'll have an Android folder, you'll have your iOS folder, you'll have your lib folder. So the lib folder is where you actually have most of your app's code, like the UI, the backend, the front end, all of that. And then the Android and iOS folders are basically gonna take care of two main things. One is running the actual simulation, so connecting it to the simulator that you can see on the right hand of my screen. And the second one would be like connecting it to external services like Google services, or connecting it to APIs and that kind of stuff. Again, that's like pretty later in town when you're more comfortable with Flutter. So yeah, let's just get started with the main part of the code. So under the lib folder, I have two main components or two main files. One is the main.dart file, which is the main entry point of our app. Okay. And the other one is the calc button.dart. So before I continue all of that, I will just run my app. So the fastest way to do that is to run the command flutter run. And then it's going to take a couple, like a minute or two to actually build the app. And at the bottom, it's telling you that it's launching the main.dart file on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. So currently the app is going to look ugly because a lot of like the UI related stuff has been changed. And with you guys, I would be like editing stuff and showing you with like hot restart and hot reloads, how that comes into life. Yep. Thank you, Alman. All right, so it's running Xcode build. And all right, so while that's running, I'll take you guys to the main.dart file. So the main.dart file, starting off, I've imported a couple packages. So the Google fonts and the math expressions.dart are going to help me create my app. Before I get started, we will be making a calculator app. So on the right hand side, you see that the app is running, and if you press the buttons, something happens, the numbers type up, but it's kind of ugly. Like I want it to be on the right hand side, and then I don't like the blue like app bar at the top. So we'll go over all of that together. So if we were to look at our file, so we have imported math expressions and Google Fonts packages from the Flutter documentation. And installing this is actually very easy. So it's not as like you would do in other like languages where you can just import your package. Like I know about Java, you just import like, I don't know, Java Swing and stuff. For Flutter, you need to essentially do two things. So if you go on to, let's say, math expressions, Flutter, you can honestly just search it on Google, and then you click on the first link. And then when you click on installing, you basically have to do two things. You have to run this command, or in our case, Flutter, we have to run this command. So what this is going to do is add the dependency. So dependency is basically that your code depends on that particular package. So you're going to be able to use all of their functions and all of their methods and all of their parameters and that kind of stuff. So what running this command does is it adds the dependency to your pubspec.yaml file. So the pubspec.yaml file is in the main root of your app, and this contains all of your dependencies. So I've imported the Google fonts, and the numbers right after it is just the version that they have. And then you have the math expressions, which I've already added. Now, so after you add that, after you run that command in the terminal, the Flutter pub add, then all you need to do is copy this line. So just copy it and paste it in your file where you use it, which is exactly what I did right here. So now I can use all of their functions. If I were to comment this one out, you will see that I get a bunch of errors. right here, because parser, expression, context model, they're not defined because I haven't defined that import. But yeah, all right. So starting off with the actual code, let me pull up my simulator back up again. Okie dokie. All right, so just like any other programming language, you need a main entry point, which is the main function. So in the main function, you call your class, or you call your section where you actually have all of the code for your calculator app, right? So in our case, it's called calc app. And then the calc app, so this line here is the constructor of your actual code. Your actual code is all under your calc app state class. So before moving on to the actual logic, I'll just walk you guys through the UI. So here, as Cindy and Alvin mentioned, there's like lots of nested stuff. You see that there's a widget. Inside a widget, you have a material app. Inside the app, you have a scaffold, app bar. And then under the app bars, you have columns, and then you have rows at the bottom. So it's all kind of like a nested loop kind of thing. All right, so starting off, you have the, so this line is like just to either show the banner or not. So since we're kind of like running this in debug mode, let me just pull up my terminal back again. One sec. Flutter run. All right, yeah. So since we're running this in debug mode, essentially it, like on the right side of the app, it shows no device is connected. One sec. Let me just connect it back. IO simulator. Yeah, so since we're running this in debug mode, on the right top corner of the app, it usually says, oh, this is running in debug mode. So this line is essentially just to remove that, because it kind of just blocks stuff, which we don't like. I'll show you that on the app. I'll just wait for it to connect. Okay, and then Flutter run. All right, so yeah, while that app is running, I'm not sure if you guys recall, but at the top it said app bar. It was like the blue colored banner at the top, which basically had the title app bar. So under it, the default is it's blue color. And by default, when you do create a new Flutter app, the app bar is like present by default. So either you can just remove the app bar completely, or you can customize it accordingly. So it's going to take like 2 more seconds. Almost done. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so at the top, you see the app bar. So let's say we want to change our title. So let's say we call it calculator app. And as Cindy and Alma mentioned, you have the hot restart and hot reload. So you don't have to run your, like you don't have to connect your simulator, run it again and again. So I'm just gonna press R on the terminal, and you see that the title of the app bar changed. Now, let's say I wanted to add a background color. All right, so let's say I wanted to do colors dot, and you can choose from a bunch of colors. Let me just choose a random color. Let's go with something pink. And then we're gonna put a comma. And one good thing about VS Code is that, in like the Dart and the Flutter plugins, is that it shows you like the colors on the side. So it's like a good overview to see like where something was. And I do know that when you have like an icon on the left-hand side, it also shows like a tiny icon as well to give you, again, like a quick overview of what that particular part is. All right, so if I press R again, my app bar's color has changed to pink. Now I don't quite like that pink. So what you can do is you can hover over the color. If I hover over the color, Flutter shows me a bunch of different variations or shades of that color. So since I like a dark color, let's go with pink. Let's go with pink bracket 900. So pink and then bracket 900. Again, hot restart, and there we go. So it's like a nice maroon or burgundy color or whatever that is. Then let's say I want to add an icon on the left side of my app. This can either be like a back button, or it can be like a navigation button, or it can just be like a sign in, sign out button, totally up to you. So Flutter has these two things called leading and trailing. So these ones are usually used for icons, but you can use them for like leading text or trailing text. So leading is going to be on the left side of the app bar, and trailing is going to be on the right side of the app bar. So let's say I want to add a leading icon. So we're going to do leading and icons, bracket icons dot, and then gives you a bunch of icons at the bottom that you can choose from. Let's just choose a random one. Let's go with account balance wallet. Icon. There we go. All right, now again, if I press hot restart, the icon at the left-hand side, I don't know what that is. I think that's just like a wallet button, but yeah, so you can see that the icon is present in the correct location. Now, for your icons, again, if you hover over the icon function or icon method, it shows you its allowed parameters. So the first one is icon, then you have color, then you have size, then you have text direction, semantic labels, all of that. So the semantic label is basically what like the text you see when you hover over an icon. But yeah, so these are all the ways you can customize the icon. So you can change its size, all of that. And the same thing, if you hover over app bar, it tells you all of the allowed parameters. So for example, I've already used the title, right? So I've set title, and then I have the text widget. And I also have background color, right? I've set the background color to colors.pink. So by hovering over the object, it gives you a very quick like reminder of, oh, these are the different ways you can customize it. And then, yeah, I don't want to add an elevation because I don't think you guys can see the elevation, because the elevation is essentially like shadow. So actually, let's do one thing. If I were to change my background to white, and then if I were to show you guys the elevation, I think that would make sense. Oh no, not the background of that. Okay, I'm gonna leave that to pink. I'm gonna change the background color of my app. All right, so let's change that to white. And if we restart, there we go. So, well, you can't really see anything because the colors of the buttons were white as well. But all right, so let's add an elevation. Let's add a tiny elevation and see if that does anything. Let's add 5.0. Oops. Let's add 5.0 and then hot restart. Nothing really happened. Let's do 80 and see if something happens. There we go. You guys see the shadow, which I don't know, is kind of redundant in this case because you can't really see it, but that's again just like a possibility of what you can do. Then, all right, I'm going to change my background color back to black. Or actually, black is good. Again, yeah, if you hover over the color, you can see the different shades. I think I just like the proper solid black. So I'm gonna hot restart again. And again, I'm hot restarting just by pressing R into the terminal. And you can see a list of the commands when you ran the app. So you have the tiny R for hot reload, you have the capital R for hot restart, and then H is list all the commands, quit is quit your simulation and that kind of stuff. All right, next. Oh, also, you can also use hex codes for colors. So if you have like a UI design already given to you and they've used a specific hex code and like Flutter, you're not sure which exact color is in that case. So you can also use hex codes for it. Hot restart. So that was like a greenish, bluish, grayish color. If that looks good. I think it looks ugly with the pink, but just for the sake of this. All right, so next we have a container. So that was our main app, right? We changed the background color and stuff of all of it. Now inside that we have a container. So which is essentially this container. I'm not sure if you guys can see my mouse, but that's the container where we're going to be typing our text and stuff, right? So let me just type in some number so you guys can see the changes. All right, so that's what it looks like currently. If I were to change the padding. All right, so the padding, let's change it to 0. Let's see if that does anything. All right, so that moved it a little bit. So actually before that, we'll do one thing. We'll fix its alignment. So there's a very neat alignment function or alignment widget in Flutter. So think of this as like a graph. So the 0, 0 coordinates is basically going to be at the origin. So if I were to change this to 0, 0.0 and 0, 0.0, so it's basically the X and Y coordinates. So, and then I click hot restart. Oh, that didn't do anything. If I were to do 2 and 2, that was too much. Let's do 1. The 2 and 2 went out of screen. Let's do 1 and 1. All right, so you guys can see that that little text has been aligned right to the edge, right? But it still kind of looks awkward because it's too much to the right. I wanted to match I wanted to match where my buttons end. So what we can do is we can add padding on the right side of the text. So padding, as the name suggests, it's kind of like a cushion between the border of your phone, like the end of your phone and the actual text. So this line here, the padding currently is 0. And there's a bunch of ways you can add padding. You have only right. Then there's this one thing called edge insets dot from LTRB. So the LTRB stands for left, top, right button. And you can add in your values for all 4 of those. But since we don't really care about the left, top, and bottom padding for this one, we are just worried about the right-hand padding because you don't want it to overflow from the screen. Let's change it to, let's try something like 30 and see what happens. All right, so 30, it's still a little bit to the left of the button. I want it just a tiny bit towards the right. So let's do 25 and see if that's lining up a little bit more. Let's do 20. That's too much. Let's do 22. All right. Yeah, I think it's perfectly in line now. So that's how you can kind of orient your text. Now inside that container, so that was our entire container. All right. Inside that container, we have a child. And the child was this text. So the history, the white thing you can see, that was your child. And that is what we were kind of editing. And the child what does the child contain? It essentially contains the history. So history is a variable which we defined right up top here. So history basically remembers the last thing you stored. All right. And I'll again go over that in a bit right here, but just think of it as just like some text input. And now we can change the UI of that text. All right. So the current color of it is white. Let's change it to yellow and see if that does anything. So the text color changed to yellow. As easy as that. Let's change it back to, let's change it to a light. Actually, white's fine. And then, if you guys recall, we used Google Fonts as an import at the top. So Flutter has like just the basic ones like sans serif and like Arial and that kind of stuff. But here, let's say we want to use a font called Rubik, right? So, which is something we need to import. So what I can do is oh my God, nope. 1 sec. Okay, sorry. Anyway, all right, so yeah, so what I can do is I can, instead of using just the default text, I can use my Google fonts that I imported. And you style it the exact same way. So you call the function, right? Google fonts.rubik. So that's the type of font. And then you can change the font size. So currently the font size is 24. Actually, let me quickly restart this because I removed the text styling. All right, so this color is like, seems to be like a gray color. So let's change that color to white because I can't really see it. Colors.white, hot restart, there we go. And font size is 24. I think 24 looks okay. And yeah, so that is taken care of. So we have one container taken care of. All right. So it's that container has been taken care of. Next, we have the second container, which contains the text that you're inputting, right? So again, you have your padding. I'm going to fix the alignment. I believe the alignment is going to be the same, 1 and 1. I hot restart. There we go. I'm going to change my padding to the same. So I'm going to change it to 22. So they both line up. I'm going to hot restart. There we go. Okay. Oh, and if you notice here, it says edge insets all, right? So if I were to, so all entails basically top, left, right, and the bottom. If I were to just have it changed to, actually, if I change it to something large, like 40, so not only is the text going to move to the left, it's also going to move a bit to the top, and it's going to add more space between the buttons and the text right above it. So let's change it to 42 and see what happens. All right, so it's kind of messed up, right? Because we like added a bunch of padding, but yeah, so that's the idea. So there's different ways you can change padding. You can only have it on one side, you can have it on all sides, you can have it like customized to basically however you want it to do. All right, so let's set it back. Okie dokie, and I think I don't like the yellow. I'm gonna change it to, actually I'm fine with the yellow, honestly. It looks ugly, but I can't think of any other colors. Okay, now we come to the fun button part. All right, so as Cindy and Alvin mentioned, we have like columns and rows. So columns are basically vertical components and rows are horizontal components. So these all 4 buttons, so the AC, the clear, the percent, and the division sign are all going to be in one row, which you can see here. All right, so let me just zoom out. Actually, I won't zoom out. I'll just minimize my terminal. All right, so if you guys see, this one component is all under one row, and it contains the buttons AC, the clear button, the percent button, and the division. And again, we have like the colors of the text, we have the fill colors, I'm not gonna mess with those because I think it looks okay. And yeah, we can change the text and stuff. So let's change the C to a clear, and I restart. That overflowed because the button isn't big enough. So let me just get it back to C. That should be okay. All right. And the same thing, then we move down to our second row. So under the second row, you have a 7, you have an 8, you have a 9, and you have the multiplication symbol, right? Then the third row, and then the fourth row, and then the fifth row, right? So this is kind of how you structure your buttons. And all of these rows, if you notice, would be in one column, right? Because all of these 4 rows are essentially stacked one on top of the other, right? In a column form. So all of these are inside this big column, and under that big column, you have the different rows. And now let's look at the functions and stuff inside here. So this was just the main.dart file. There was another file under the widgets folder, which we created, called the calc button.dart. So the calc button.dart essentially deals with like the buttons and what they do in a sense. So if we go back to our main.dart file, I'm actually going to maximize this and move it side by side so you guys can see what's happening. All right, so on the left is my main.dart file, and on the right is my calc button.dart file. All right, so under my row, I just chose a random row. I chose the row with the buttons 4, 5, 6 and the subtraction sign, this one right here. All right, so here, when I click, essentially when I call the function calc button, it calls the calc button function in my calc button file, right? And this is valid because I already imported the widgets, the calc button.dart file under the widgets folder. If I were to remove this, you'd see that there'd be a bunch of errors because it's like, oh, I don't know where the calc button function is because I haven't defined a calc button function in my main.dart file, right? I only have clear and clear, all clear and clear, which I'll cover in a bit. So you do need to import the file where you're actually trying to import a function from, right? So when I call that calc button function, all right, let's say, all right, so yeah, calc button function, I pass in a text, which is labeled 7, and the callback is my num click. So this essentially builds the calc button, and then under this, you have like an event handler. So the on pressed function here is basically what happens when you press the button, right? So I'm not sure if it's like you guys have used, what other languages have that? I know Java has it. It's like, oh, on click, take me to this page, or on click, add this plus this, or something like that. So it's the same kind of logic. All right. So under that, we have the callback so we have the callback function. Where's my callback function? One sec. Oh, it's the num click. All right. My num click. All right, here, there we go. Okay. So when I call the callback function, I pass in my text, which was passed in from your like calc button function, which was like C, or it was 7. So let's say you passed in 7 and then you call the num click function. All right. So under the num click function, what it essentially does is it adds the expression and the text that you passed in. So the expression is the thing that's already in your kind of like screen, and the text is the button that you just pressed. So if I were to pull up my simulator, let me do that. All right, so let me clear. All right, so let's say we have 63. So 63 would be stored in expression. And then if I press my button 7, so 7 is basically my text value, and it's essentially just going to concatenate those two together to give you the 637. And then my 637 is going to be my expression. And then let's say I click the 3. So my 3 was the value for text. And then I'm going to add the 3 to the 637, which was the original expression. And then the same thing. So let's look at the button AC. So when I click the button AC, the function that I want to call is all clear, which I've defined here. So when I click all clear, I wanted to set the history to an empty string and the expression to an empty string. So let's just say I add a value. All right, so my history currently is 6373 plus 2, and my expression is the yellow text right here. So when I press the AC button, it changes both of those strings to an empty string, and hence you see nothing. All right. And then the same thing is going to happen with your clear button. So, and in clear, we're only going to change the expression. We're not going to touch the history. So let's say I added something and then, okay. So if I were to press the clear button, I'm going to call my clear function, which I defined here. And here, notice that the history is going to remain the same because you're just clearing your latest entry, right? So if I click clear, my history is going to remain the same. It's just that my expression has now become an empty string. And one last thing is that these functions, or like the math expressions like folder or package that we installed, comes in very handy to kind of shorten your code. So what I've done here is my expression is basically just using a function called evaluation type, or my function called evaluate, which is defined in my math package. All right. So if you look at the description, it says evaluates the expression according to the given type and context. So before that, the context model essentially is kind of like a snapshot of all of your, like the context model keeps track of all of the texts and like parameters you inputted, right? Because it needs to remember all of the values to actually perform calculations. So you can think of it like a map, and then from the map, it evaluates all of your expressions. And then it converts those expressions into a string, because essentially we're displaying a string on our app, right? I don't think you can display integers. Even if you do want to display integers, you need to convert the integers into a string, and only then can you actually display that on your app's container. If we weren't to use like the functions provided by the math expressions package, and actually the same thing with parser. So since we are converting our calculations into a string, and you're taking strings as inputs, right? Like, because the buttons are essentially strings, right? Because we passed in text. You can't perform calculations on strings. Like, what is a string 7 plus a string 8? It doesn't know. So it's basically converting that string into an integer. It's performing the calculations using the expression and the evaluate functions. And then it's converting those evaluations back to a string, and then it's printing it out, or it's storing it in expression and then printing it out on the screen. If we weren't to use the parser, you'd have to use code like this. So this one line are actually, yeah, these lines, right? Like these two lines would be replaced by all of this code. So you're storing the strings into a variable, then you're computing them individually, and then you're calculating the value, and then another line at the bottom would be to convert the expression into a string. So which is just too much code and it's very redundant. So you can just use your packages that your imports offer. And yeah, I think that's about it. We have 8 minutes to go over any questions or concerns and that kind of stuff. If I can reload, or actually I can hot restart. So hot restart basically gets you to your starting point. So it just resets your entire app. And yeah, and I can press quit and it basically quits out of my application. It tells me application is finished. And yeah. Can open the chat. Okie dokie.
Yeah, and if you guys don't have any questions or you want to go back and look at the code, we sent the link above. I can send it again. And that's where I've been kind of keeping all the code updated from what Ananya has been doing. So everything has been filled out and everything. So if you want to look back at it, if you intend on installing Flutter and using it for your hack, or just want to learn more about Flutter, feel free to just download this entire folder and just run it on your local device. So yeah, let's see. How long do you think it would take for someone to learn Flutter and create an actual application? So I guess it really depends on if you have prior knowledge with programming before. You don't have to, but say if you're like a completely new beginner and everything, I would say that to learn Flutter and create like a simple application, for example, say the calculator, it would take approximately maybe 2 to 3 days. It's just a stretch because if you're like actively trying to learn Flutter, it would take 2 to 3 days. But if you're like trying to maybe learn, say it like an hour a day, then it might take like a little longer than expected.
I would add to that. So I don't think like HTML and PHP syntaxes, I personally think I don't think helped a lot. Flutter is very similar to English because it basically just tells you, oh, title, app bar, and then background color, all of that. So the main two struggles that I had with Flutter was, one was installation. You had to do a little bit of continuous trials to actually get your Flutter to work, because you have to run Flutter Doctor. Sometimes you have like your laptop doesn't have the proper stuff installed and that kind of stuff. Other than that, based on like for the language, understanding what is allowed inside what component took me a bunch of while to understand. One is like the difference between children and child, and then child can't go inside this particular component, and then you get like errors and that kind of stuff. Other than that, like understanding the logic of it is very easy. I think it can make an app pretty fast if you kind of overcome those two, like installation and then understanding how everything is nested inside. Like the image that Elman and Cindy put up was really good. I actually never, that would have been a very useful thing to know at the like when we started. But yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, there's a lot of documentation and a lot of like YouTube tutorials online that could potentially help. For example, like the flutter.dev documentation is very thorough. It has sample code and everything for any widgets and any commands, methods that you have, including packages too. It's very well documented, so taking a look at that would also work. And it also depends on, like for installation issues, if you're using a Mac, it might be more difficult, but when I, for example, installed it on Android Studio first off, it was a very smooth process for me because it was like, it just like worked really well. There was a lot of synergy between the two.
Yeah, and I think there's another question asking if can other text editors work with Flutter like Sublime. I think Sublime Text has a Dart plugin, but I'd say if you wanted to really dive into the Flutter app development, then we recommend using Android Studio or VS Code just because it has like a Flutter plugin as well as Dart. So it makes the whole development process much easier. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I also saw your question about HTML and PHP syntaxes. So those don't work. They're not too similar to Flutter, but I'd say a Flutter widget is kind of like a combination of HTML plus CSS and some concepts in web dev, for example, like flexboxes or like containers. Those concepts are definitely transferable if you're interested in doing Flutter app development.
Yeah, I would kind of say like CSS, and it's kind of like a mush between Java too as well, because sometimes like, for example, classes and states are also used in Java as well. Yeah, if there aren't any questions, oh, there's another one.
Okay, this is something I personally struggle with. I can't find a text formatter for Dart or for Flutter. So most of my code, I've been like formatting it myself. I do know that like a bunch of like Post and Stack Overflow and stuff have told me that the Dart plugin actually has like text formatting enabled automatically. You just need to go to settings and like turn it on, like check it, which I have, but nothing happened. Nothing seems to change. So I'm not sure if Alman or Cindy know anything about the text formatting.
Yeah, it actually worked for me with the Flutter plugin. Yeah, so it did, the text formatting did work for me. I just had to, yeah, configure those settings to have it like auto format for me once I click save. Or you could also just like force it with like format document if you're using VS Code. But yeah.
Yeah, not sure. Yeah, not sure if your question means like if there's like a plugin to beautify the code that you write, or do you mean like a faster web dev tool? Because I'm not quite sure what Dreamweaver is. Is that like a fast development toolkit? Because if you're asking about if there's like a toolkit that makes Flutter development much faster, there's none that I'm aware of. Not sure if Ananya and Alman, you guys just want to add on to that.
I know because I use VS Code personally with Flutter, but there's also like a lot of extensions for Flutter snippets that allow for, I guess, easy development. It just suggests stuff like right off the bat, like anything you want to type in or anything, it kind of suggests it for you. But I'm not sure about other text editors though. Awesome, no worries. But yeah, it's already 7 right now, so it's the end of the workshop. But we also had another page for, I guess, our socials and anything, but we didn't put that up. But it's okay. If you have any questions or anything about Flutter or anything, be sure to, I think there is an app development channel. If the organizers can verify that, maybe you could just like add one of us. It's either me, Almaning, Cindy Gu, or Ananya. And then you can just add us, and then we'll be sure to answer any of your questions if you have any left over.
I share my screen just for the.
There we go.
I forgot. I'm
Nice.
sorry. You guys can take a picture of it if you'd like.
Or we
But
could
yeah.
also share the slide deck. I'm not sure if the
Yeah.
organizers also will share it later on, but
Mhm.
we'll be sure to, like, these are our socials, and it has links to anything related to us, as well as the application we are currently developing.
Yeah, if you guys want to share it in the app development channel on Discord, that would be great. We also have all of their contact information in our hat packs, which can also be found on Discord. So if you have any further questions, you can always go back and contact them either through the app development channel or just through their emails. So thank you so much for coming. Speaking for everyone, this was such an insightful workshop, and thank you so much for teaching us and speaking to us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out and everything. We're really happy to be here today.
Okay.